Where exactly do the borders between animal and plant infections lie? Very clearly defined. This is probably a good thing, as I don't know about you guys, but I'm not trying to get Dutch elms disease. One day we will find a cure, but until such time, the Dutch elms have been put on notice. Given the massive divide between these two forms of life splitting off from one another quite some time ago, if you count 1.6 billion years, quite some time ago, diseases had to specialize in what they actually wanted to attack. Remember, a jack of all trades is a master of none, and for microscopic life, which viruses may or may not be depending on which biologist you ask, the name of the game is specialization. In the events of die alone, which I thought one of my commenters was being dramatic when they wrote that, an infection that is very clearly hailing from plants begins spreading across humanity fairly rapidly, and it's kind of alarming. With the symptoms presenting themselves as amnesia and violent bloodthirsty behavior, humanity rapidly begins to fall, with people claiming it is nature trying to retake the planet. Which, no, humanity number one, this is our rock. And that is completely human hubris talking, so in today's episode, let's discuss the infection, where it originated from, and why drinking human blood momentarily returns memory and control that the person has. And what's more alarming is, this seems like an actual disease that has a thread of reality to it. So you know the drill, up on screen you'll see a timestamp. Go there to jump to the science, otherwise let's get into the summary for all those that have not seen the movie. But first, this episode is sponsored by Factor. Are you ready to have fresh, never frozen meals delivered directly to your door? With 60 add-ons like breakfast, on-the-go lunch, snacks, and beverages, there is an option for everyone. Along with that, you'll have choices like keto, veggie, vegan options, or my personal favorite, Protein Plus, as I need protein to fuel the gains. And you're talking like 650 calories for a meal that is delicious, and you get like 42 grams of protein. And since I've been eating Factor, brother, the gains are hitting. Throwing around 110-pound dumbbells on dumbbell press, it's amazing. Nutrition is foundational to any goal, and Factor can help with that. They realize that life can get hectic, and Factor is pretty flexible in response. So if you need to pause your order for a week, or maybe you need more meals, Factor can reschedule deliveries and bump up the amount of food. So if you're ready to start taking your health seriously, then head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50Roanoke to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50Roanoke at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. All right, let's get back to it. We kick off our story with, oh God, Mind's Eye Entertainment.
No. Wait.
Oh Lord. A man stands looking at a house that, if you know the route that I'm talking about, you'll actually pass this house. It's the road between Fort Collins and the border of Wyoming, I believe. I think it's Highway 287. It's a pretty cool drive, except for it's really the hills have eyes at 3 a.m. Also, there is nothing out there, and you can see where you are driving about an hour ahead of time. Can't wait to do that again in October. Go to Halo Worlds, you'll see me there. A man then talks about how when you die, your life flashes before your eyes. Could be for a multitude of reasons. I have 40% of an idea on that. I'm still going to talk about the science-related material in the summary, but science relating specifically to this. Essentially, it appears like your brain starts firing because it releases a small amount of DMT, and essentially that could be causing hallucinations. Of course, we aren't technically sure if a soul exists within the body, so it could also be you're literally seeing your life before your soul leaves your body, but remains to be seen as to what is actually the reasoning behind it. But there's like a cocktail of neurotransmitters released in your brain close to death, which causes a lot of neurons to fire, which also means you're going to be seeing things, which is usually all of your memories all at once. Anyhow, we'll reserve the science for specifically this infection at the end. So as he flashes back to a random woman who definitely is not going to get got based on the great times they're having, this is literally the quintessential, oh, my wife is repeating my name over and over again while I sleep for some reason, and I can't wake up and respond to her. You guys remember that trope? It was bizarre. It was in the 2010s, and it was like, bro, wake up. Your wife is calling your name. Also, why is it always bright white in the room and everyone is in their underwear?
Huh?
Who's to say? Anyhow, so then he pulls the old force multiplier out as he straight up domes himself. Okay then, well, good luck, bro. As Die Alone pops up, which I thought, again, one of my commenters was telling me to do that. Of course, it's hard to know sometimes when people find this channel, you will not believe the nonsense that gets said. So as the radio plays, it talks about how transmission comes from human contact as alerts play on their phone. They get another alert nearby as he complains they left too late. Too late for what exactly? All right, you know what? I'm breaking into it. They literally waited for Emma to finish her shift at work. It's so stupid. Emma talks about how she can drive as Bro's like, no, I got it. And then straight up wrecks the car and wakes up to a bright and sunny morning. Literally, back on my honeymoon back in the day, I drove from Florida. I think I made it to New Hampshire. We were supposed to go to Maine. And finally, my wife at the time was like, hey, do you want me to drive? I was like, oh my God. I just realized I've been driving for 19 hours. Anyways, glad I relinquished the wheel on that one. So, way to go, Chief, on crashing the car. You should have just let her drive. Following the blood trail out of the car, checking his arm, it's broken, as it says Emma with a heart on it. Wandering off into an abandoned town that looks rather old, he calls out asking where everyone is. Well, bro, zombie invasion of Treeple, obviously. Looking at the symptoms on the sign, you get headaches and a few other symptoms that are also blurred out. Also, when you see these things, you're going to wonder how anyone actually gets got by them. But he enters an old school building, which is about the worst idea I've ever seen. What could you possibly find in there? I'm staying out in the open, or heading to Humansville, Missouri, because we all know nothing human is out in Humansville, Missouri. Stop playing with me, Humansville. Also, I imagine it being the end of the world, and you spend it just, like, if you're that guy that just tags random abandoned structures because it's the end of the world, I think you're a bit of a dork. So as the creeper vehicle pulls up with the Be Eating You license plate, a guy asks if he's lost. He reports he just woke up and doesn't know where he is as they open up on him, but they both get got by someone in the distance. A woman then approaches, walking past him as she goes and knocks the other dude back out to finish the job. Prometheus reports he's just looking for his girlfriend. Ain't we all? As then she jumps into the truck to see if it works. Grabbing a meat suit, she says to give her a hand as she begins dragging him off. He passes out trying to help her, as then he wakes up in the back of the truck as we get the wife being pulled away under the covers trope. Again, this was the trope. And it isn't even in the 2010s. I think this came out in 2024. So waking up, he's in a creepy room calling out to Emma once more. Again, man, if my girlfriend was lost and I was in this stranger's house who just domed these two dudes, probably the last thing I'm gonna do is be calling out my girlfriend's name. That's a, oh, so there's two of you situation. Way to sell her out. In the apocalypse, the less a stranger knows about you, probably the better. So the woman downstairs then asks how his head is, as she reports her name is May and that he's Ethan. She left some clothes for him on the dresser as then he heads up to go change. Coming down as evil Tommy Vercetti, which I don't know what that says about the original guy. He looks at her generator as he talks about kinetic energy. He reports that he and his girlfriend were going out to the cabin in the woods where zombies would never be. What a crazy thing to suggest, and you're crazy for believing that somehow zombies and cabins are connected, Ghost of Napa. You're crazy. He also, on the wall, notices all the magazines and news articles about the infection. He talks what happened as she reports humanity was allegedly daring a virus to wipe us out for years, and one finally called our bluff. Excuse me, what the actual hell did you just say? We haven't been daring viruses to wipe us out. If anything, we've been trying to prevent infection just in general, unless of course you're talking about, gain of function viral engineering, in which case, yeah, we may have made a oopsie doopsie on that one. Anyway, so the alleged planet's attempt to kill us off is utilizing plants, and humanity really doesn't understand anything about it. And Ethan's like, well, how did all this happen just in a few days? So wait a minute, that just invalidates her statement. We didn't create this one. So it's not even humanity daring a virus. It was a virus that appears to have jumped from plants to humans, and with it, it has taken genetic information that has become an issue. We're gonna talk about this. So May comes around the corner brandishing a hammer as she tells him not to touch anything. Heading outside, he sees nothing for miles, and approaching the truck, the living body inside is gone, as then he walks in the back to the solar panels. Seeing Moaning Myrtle over there, you can tell May was actually just waiting for her cue to go ahead and walk out. As Ethan asks to help, he then goes through the electrical components as he says whoever set this up was an idiot. All you had to do was a bit of percussive maintenance, so it definitely still works. Why would that make him an idiot? Or her an idiot? Or anyone who built it an idiot? Just seems more like a loose connection. It's nothing like the time I installed an alternator incorrectly and had to take it to a mechanic, and him and I had a great laugh over how dumb the guy before at the last shop was for installing it with only one bolt. We will never speak of that past. I was just learning about cars and I was only 18. So pertaining to this movie, did I mention he has amnesia? Yeah, that's sort of an important part. I think I mentioned it at the beginning, so all is well. So as they keep walking, Ethan then asks if she has a husband, and she asks why he's interested, as then they head back inside the house and she tells him not to snoop around. Definitely real cougar hours activated. Handing him the handheld, she then asks him to take her out, and he doesn't do it though, and as they eat dinner, he says he needs to just kind of leave. And you're gonna see why also this is a really stupid idea later for her to hand him this. So putting him on the bike, he then starts the generator process to charge the batteries, because apparently the solar panels couldn't have done that. if you used a larger gear, you could probably get more energy generation per pedal. Of course, it may take more energy to produce it, but, gear ratios and whatnot. So May is drinking in the corner as Ethan then snoops around on pictures as he says, well, I should probably really hit the road. Like 1 a.m. at a bar in college, the Cougars are making moves as they dance as she asks him to play cards with her. She then talks about how it's harder to kill him when he's sober. Actually, she's making a disturbing amount of comments about taking him out as he asks her about her face with the scars. Sick scar, by the way. I can't believe I forgot to mention it. How she got it though? Completely not sick. Some would claim downright cowardly. Also breaking in, if you find this stuff interesting and you are enjoying my summary of this video, then you should like the channel and consider subscribing because, it helps the channel survive, or just let it die. It's whatever. And if it does die, I'm gonna come to your house. I'm gonna come to your house and whisper into your ear, why did you let my channel die? Just like that. Anyway, so Ethan says he really has to head out as he says, thank you. The guy's like, thank you. Yeah, that. All right, I'm never doing that again. I just have to connect with Gen Alpha in some capacity or to Gen Z. No idea anymore. So he keeps having flashbacks to what he told his girlfriend and how they were going to meet at the cabin if they got separated. As then he sees a birdhouse. Heading inside, he straight up just jacks May's truck downstairs as, yeah, I guess she won't need that anymore, bro. Almost falling asleep again. 2 wrecks inside of 24 hours. The brain damage is going to love that. He starts having more flashbacks as one guy then tells him to wake up, and then he's arrived at the cabin. Heading over to it with menacing music playing as the subtitles claim, he then knocks on the door looking for Emma as he just decides, I'm just gonna break in. Finding a woman, she pulls a force multiplier on him as her son is standing right there. She says his girlfriend's name, and he's like, oh, how did you know that? And she's like, we were outside yelling it like an idiot. Where all the Treeple are just hanging out. As they talk though, a Treeple attack commences. This thing just sort of walks in and loses some fingers, and then breaking through the door, Ethan goes Half-Life on it with a crowbar, knocking it down. As everyone is jazzed, he saved them. The Treeple outside is up and walking once more. As look, this is what she says. She's like, yeah, head kills don't work. What the hell is a head kill? So Jolene says they want everyone. As Ethan asks, well, what does that even mean? She's like, I don't know, like they want everyone for food, just like everyone else wants. To date, I've never heard the name Jolene be used except for that one song. However, this movie used Jolene, and the Airbnb I am staying at while I record this is owned by a woman named Jolene. What are the odds of that? She then introduces her son Sam as she asks where he got his stylish cast. He's like, oh, well, my girlfriend's a doctor, which is a lie. I'm pretty sure she was a nurse, but it doesn't really matter. And she's like, oh, well, how lucky. I guess because of what we're gonna learn later. Anyways, so he reports that he hasn't seen his girlfriend in a few days. She continues on saying, well, hope is dangerous. Like, okay, Dr. Doom and Gloom, we get it. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here, blah, blah, blah. So the second cougar now makes a pass at Ethan for the night. This dude's batting 1,000, as she says, to distract her. Bro, all the signals. So he talks about Emma and the small moments that used to make him love her or something like that. And then flashing back to the past, for some reason, people were protesting a hospital. Like, okay, I mean, I remember being protested at my work back in the day. It was hilarious. But why would you be protesting a hospital? Also, it's important to understand that these forced flashbacks are quite telling as to what's going on. Ethan apparently went to Emma's work as someone then rubbed moss on one woman's wounds as they agreed to just leave that night. Okay, well, again, I have to ask, why don't you just leave right now? What do you have to do that is so, like, you gotta clock out first? If the world is falling apart, I hate to tell you guys, I know you're gonna cry, but I'm probably not gonna finish up the YouTube video I was working on. I'm probably just gonna go ahead and leave. So Cougar number 2 then takes first watch as Ethan then wakes up the next morning covered in blood. Having memories of Cougar 2, leaves are growing out of her ears, and seeing a woman across the way, he approaches her as she stands up. Finding the woman's son from earlier, the woman then grabs at her jaw, freaking out as if she's coming back too, and then gets immediately domed by May appearing out of nowhere. She domes her again, but remember, head kills, as they are called, don't work. So clearly this is a level of mitotic growth being applied to the neurons of the brain, or in general the rest of the body. Also, if double tapping everything doesn't work, why would you even bother? Why don't you just light them on fire or remove their ability to walk or grasp? Or just hit them at the base of the skull, disconnecting the spine. Well, I guess the mitotic growth would sort of negate that, but at least it would probably stop them for a little while. Also, if they're back in control of their own bodies, why do you even need to double tap them? just run away for 24 hours. Oh yeah, should have told you that part yet. So looking at a birdhouse, Emma then left a message from Ethan. She says his amnesia is getting worse. Bro, that's just pure dementia at this point. She then reports people are changing for the worst as well. Okay, so when did that happen? He then starts crashing out as she says she has a charger at her place. That is in fact how the Cougars get you back to their place. So as he walks up, he remarks that she has a nice truck. Ethan then apologizes for being weird. Don't worry, bro. You've been weird the whole time. Getting on a bicycle built for two, looks like that back tire could have used some air. As Ethan then keeps talking about how Emma is worth finding, May then laughs at him. May says she had someone, but he died. He asks what her story is, as he says he needs a distraction. She lives alone, great garden, she hunts, and takes in strangers apparently. She says she's also very lonely and wishes she had already checked out. As we see more Treeple being trees, they seem to really not be too much of a problem after a while. I'm gonna be real with you, none of these really seem that threatening. So approaching the gas station from his dreams or memories, he sees himself driving in. As him and Emma talk, you know people are infected with something, and yet you choose not to pay attention to your surroundings, which is very smart. Ethan straight up lights up a dude, as then she says, "Oh my god, you actually did it!" Like, is Ethan worthless? Is that how she views him? Anyway, so his arm then gets grabbed. Passing out, May then asks if he's okay, as he says that he's actually fairly hungry. Grabbing random shots of walking through an abandoned town, they then get back to May's as the door is slightly open. An 1880s train robber is there for some reason, as he reports he lost his wife somewhere in the area and he's looking for her. She asks if he's got a handheld with him, as he says no, but actually he does. You are surrounded by Treeple. Why would you think that bro, you're approaching these people, right? You've clearly survived as long as you have. Why would they think that you didn't have a way to actually deal with the Treeple? Then again, they seem to only work temporarily, but you know what, who knows. So patting Fabio down here, he says he's looking for answers, as May then says, one hot meal in exchange for a chore. As then she talks to Ethan. He asks if she was angling for a three-way, which, I mean, I'm gonna be real with you, most of this movie sounds like that. Walking off behind the truck because Fabio has to take a piss, he then grabs a handheld next because who wouldn't have two of these things? May then comes out and gives them lemonade, and she tells him, it's poison in the lemonade. As then she approaches Ethan, telling him, tell Fabio that you aren't hungry. Ethan's stomach then starts growling at dinner because bro's obviously hungry, as he says, no, I'm actually good. May then starts getting Fabio drunk, as he asks, when was the last time Ethan saw his woman? Handing a picture to Ethan, he says his woman went missing after she mentioned a house with power, and Ethan then starts passing out as Fabio stands up and then pulls a handheld on May. His chest hurts though, as Fabio then asks what she did to Ethan. She sedated him, as then he is knocked out. Ethan now wakes up, as two others have broken into May's house. A dude named Fox and a dude named Wolf. Okay, weirdos. Why not just I don't know, Greg and Ryan? Why does it have to be this way? So May then drops a syringe of blood, as then they smack her in the face, as Fabio stands up saying he's going to search out the rest of the house for proof that his wife was there. He tells her to wake up, as she's not who she says she is. Wolf then horribly interrogates her, as he asks what is in the barn. Wolf then tells Fox to keep an eye on her, as then he heads out there. Meanwhile, Ethan finds Emma's locket upstairs. Fabio says he is sorry, as it appears May had gotten to his girlfriend too. Fabio did nothing wrong. He then tells him, let's go do something about this though, since we got her. Wolf heads out to the barn, searching it in the worst way possible. Look, I'm not gonna claim to be some close quarters expert or a prepper or anything, but isn't it common sense to just not have your arms straight out, holding a force multiplier when entering a room? All you're going to do is telegraph the fact that you're entering a room, and if someone is around the corner, they just smack down your arms and then just dome you. How do these people survive as long as they have? So Fox then plays the piano for a second as Fabio comes down, dumping out jewelry and cards. Finding his wife's rosarides or bead necklace or I have no idea what that is the longer I look at it. Wolf continues his search, finding a locked door. I break in to say the locked door that the cannibals had at the farm in the Walking Dead game. Keith was a total doucher for pushing the issue as hard as he did. It would have been way easier to just have them talk to the two brothers and then give Lee time to actually properly break in. Keith didn't have to be a part of that operation. He just wanted to be. Just saying. Keith is not the bro that y'all make him out to be. So May then tells Ethan to put the handheld down, as she says she didn't take out Emma. And here's the thing, Ethan's very clearly trying to ask her where Emma is, and everyone here is allergic to straight answers, as then she mentions she took out Emma a long time ago, which again is a lie. He then asks how long he's had amnesia for, as Fabio asks how long Ethan has also had amnesia for, because this is kind of integral to, him standing around for the moment. So Fabio then asks, what are they going to find in that barn, as Wolf finds an armless dude in the barn. Also, I just want to point out, Fabio didn't know Wolf went to search the barn, I don't think. He was too busy, right? I don't think he was searching upstairs. So how does he know Wolf found something in the barn? Anyways, so Fabio then says either May tells him or he will. Ethan then asks if he's sick, as May tells him, no, but you're dead. Wolf then hits a trap and gets blown up as the barn erupts. Also, Myrtle finally gets a snack. Not really sure why she couldn't have done that earlier. Ethan then has flashbacks to all the people he's eaten as Fabio goes to dome May, but it backfires into his hand as Ethan then begins turning as he attacks Fabio and starts eating him. So you see how stupid it was that May handed Ethan the handheld? It would have just blown his fingers apart, and for what? Because what we learn here in a second makes her doing that completely psychotic. So as May then watches him eat his manwich, he starts throwing up later. Why, you may be asking? Well, that is a complete unknown. Clearly they want man meat. I don't understand why he's throwing this up, but blood appears to actually maybe be the need here, not meat. So waking up the next day, the cast on his arm is written in green marker instead of red. May then wakes up Ethan asking how he slept. She asks if he remembers her or even knows who she is. This is like 51st Dates, but with zombies. Flashing back, Emma says he needs to keep up with her, as in they walk over to her barn that they are actually currently at, because they took over this entire location. Approaching the Punisher, he then tells them to strip down so he can determine if any of them have been bit, with his daughter right there. That's a bit strange, but it is what it is. So she then tells the Punisher that she just came from a crash. His daughter mentions Bobby, which clearly upsets the Punisher, and then heading inside for dinner, Ethan looks at the paper about the nation in crisis as he goes and makes a drink. He talks about how he reclaimed the barn that fell down to make cabinets and shelves. He connects it to humanity and how the disease is making people get back to their, dare I say, roots. Anyway, so she's doom and gloom as usual as he tells her she doesn't have the market cornered on suffering, so stop being ridiculous. Dinner is now ready as Ethan then wakes back up, looking down at his arm. Seeing all the red hearts, he looks at May, who's about to bag them 50 pounds of meat, as then he pulls a handheld on her, saying it was close, but she got the heart wrong. So the jig is up, the news is out, they finally know he's infected, as she tells him he needs to feed, as we get a flashback to what happened. So, I don't know, while hugging and fugging over at the the gas station, the Treeson out here ended up taking him out as he realizes his arm was bitten, and then someone rubbed moss in his wound. The man who bit then wakes back up as he has now come back to, and then they are back at the Punisher's cabin. Dinner is ready as they all sit down and say grace. Based. Emma then says maybe they should wash up first, as then she takes Ethan up the stairs. Saying grace without them, Ethan then starts crashing out in the bathroom as he tells Emma not to leave him, as then she heads downstairs. Looking as sketch and breathless as possible, which won't draw any attention whatsoever, the Punisher then pulls a handheld on her because she looks sketch and breathless, as then he tells his wife and youngling to go outside. He asks where her handheld is, as he has sniffed out that Ethan is in fact infected. And Emma showed up to basically have his family get eaten. Dude, the Punisher is like completely on the ball with this one. So for some reason, his wife and daughter then decide to kind of just come back in the house and then get got as a fight ensues between Emma and the Punisher. He cuts open her face on the ceramic dish as then she stabbed him and then put a piece of lead into him. Upstairs, Ethan has consumed the mother and was eating the youngling. I'm assuming that's Myrtle though, but I have no idea to be honest with you. Myrtle could have just been some random. It's never really explained who she is. Ethan then asks how long she's been doing this for, as she says too long. He has to eat daily and it has to be human flesh. When he eats regularly, he is the fountain of youth, but his memory is still messed up. As the years have passed, one day Ethan just completely stopped recognizing her. He would occasionally catch on asking if she was Emma outright, but lately, not so much. She then tells her she should have just let him die, and she did evidently, but here he is. So walking up the hill, he then domes himself from the beginning, but remember, head kills don't work, as then he stands back up. Emma then tells him to stop, as she's like, yeah, we're just gonna move on from this nonsense. So they make out, as he still needs to eat. So she gets bit, as it becomes a not so great time, but you know, it is what it is. But they're both now infected, and they hold hands, as they've now become skeletons that just sort of stand there covered in cobwebs. Well, given all the time that has passed, it's entirely possible that society has recovered somewhat, so that seems like a really stupid plan that they had, but you know, what do I know? And thus concludes, die alone. So you basically give Ethan a handheld that would blow off his fingers if he tried to pull the trigger or accidentally even hit it, and then it clearly would have been accidental. Is Emma like the new Amy? I mean, it's close, but not entirely. While Amy allowed her friends to be killed off, to save herself. At least Emma held on to like one person, making her just shy. So she is Amy Light. So to explain this disease, there are several things that we clearly need to discuss. I think the approach that we should take would be the most clear path, obviously. Begin with where the infection started and how it jumped to humanity before moving on to what it does to the brain during the infection process, before hitting up why the amnesia even sets in and how it is reversed with blood of others, as clearly they aren't really doing this to eat meat, as they just kind of throw it up later. But before heading into the ultimate conclusion of the infection and how it alters the body in the way that it does, which is fairly interesting given how the plant material literally growing off their heads is discussed, we need to kind of, after that, get into a discussion of the illness or like a cure for the illness. So, like all good infections, we must ask, where did it come from? And like all the classics, it will be argued about for years to come, with everyone applying a personal bias because humanity, baby. But what I find weird is the fact that clearly this is outlined as a virus in the movie, yet it has some very clear examples of it being almost like a spore-like infection, almost comparable to The Last of Us in some respects, which The Last of Us Season 2, ooh.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
Anyways, although clearly that was a cordyceps infection and this is not of that caliber. However, many areas are similarly affected, in this instance the central nervous system clearly. So let's start with the bite of 84. As the skin is broken, I don't believe this to be some sort of, I don't know, rabies infection. I wish it was, and I know you do too. But I also don't believe it to be like a plant infection. And by that I mean like a legitimate plant infecting a person. But it clearly must be a virus. Now, when you look at a tree and see the tumor-like growths on it, it's not necessarily exactly like cancer. Instead, the cells divided excessively to create what is known as a gall, but the literature on it basically currently suggests it is a bacteria known as Agrobacterium tumefaciens, and it's just a bacteria. Now, I am not a botanist by any stretch of the imagination, but fundamentally the overall effects is the same as on like an animal cell infected with a virus that may produce a cancer, or at least it's fairly similar. This is essentially a tumor, but probably more in line with what we would call a benign tumor if, like, say, an animal had it. Which also completely unrelated to the tree, but we may have to actually start reclassifying what cancer actually is, because the more scans that are done with people who are considered healthy and cancer-free, they'll end up finding some sort of tumor growth that is completely benign, meaning cancer is prevalent in many humans, it's just not causing an issue. So the question after that becomes, why do they turn malignant? Anyhow, this gall growth really are just excessive cells being grown in response to the presence of this bacteria, and they still have a very similar function as to regular cells, so they're not becoming like malignant and taking up nutrients from the area. Now, given humanity has never dealt with an issue as such, I would propose an idea for this issue. So for this leap to happen and take on the cancerous trait, we need to use the bacteria in the tree as a medium in which the virus could possibly infect. So I believe what happens is this. The bacteria present in the tree becomes infected by a virus of source that is native to plants already. Very likely something like a mosaic virus, which is common in trees anyhow. Upon this taking place, what you would have is a plant virus interacting with a plant bacteria, still unrelated to humanity at this point, but this arrangement and interaction continues for several millennia. During this time frame, an event would take place that might seem odd, but really isn't. When viruses are exposed to cells they aren't really all that familiar with, they can adapt and then leap to those different cells. Pretty haphazardly at first, but the infection may not even really be all that powerful, but ultimately, as it's accomplished, this allows for the cell that may have been basically immune at first because there wasn't the correct, essentially, co-receptors on the cell to even take in the virus, or the virus was just really not familiar with the machinery of the cell. That cell can now be infected just by the virus being there. The bacteria that the virus was actually infecting would in turn begin turning on the plants and then using their cells and altering behaviors. During this process, an incredibly common event known as horizontal gene transfer would take place. This means that some of the plant's genome could be incorporated into the genome of the virus. A very small amount, but an amount nonetheless. We actually see this with animal viruses all the time. If you, let's say like you get sick and then your friend catches it from you, there's a very slight chance some of your genome can actually be encoded into their DNA via this infection, which is pretty wild, but interestingly enough, even though viruses are, I mean, let's be real here, they're kind of douchers of the planet, they do appear to be sort of like spoons mixing the genetic gumbo over time, potentially inducing new traits into cells by dropping off genes from others. So these plant genes are incorporated into the genome of the virus, and the virus would continue to have this buildup to a degree. It's not a lot, but it is measurable. Eventually, an event happens. Somehow this virus, which is infecting both this bacteria and these plants, is able to make a leap to humans. Now, how is that possible? Well, by utilizing the gametes of a plant during pollinating season, it may be that the virus actually attaches itself to the pollen, much like how, it changed before as it drifts through the environment and then is subsequently inhaled by humans, and then over time, for one reason or another, it is able to actively infect humans. It should be known that nobody knows where the infection came from, but this seems like the most clear pathway to infecting humans from my perspective, unless someone was just really into plants and it was able to make a leap through continued interaction, which given humanity sometimes is always a possibility that someone just went full on Evil Dead with a tree. Don't look into that. And this triggered the first infection, which would then lead to the first bite. But before we move on, we need to figure out why then did someone change to the level that they did to become infectious and just start biting others in the first place. As the virus moved into their body, it's clear it would be neurotropic in nature. Moving to the brain, it would then infect the tissue, but it would really only contain something most viruses don't have, which is enough genes from the plants that they have infected prior. This would make this probably a retrovirus of sorts that encodes into the genome via reverse transcriptase. But upon this being accomplished, I believe what happens is the mitotic abilities would have to be increased because I believe new tissue is actually going to be added into the brain. As the cells are infected, much like how the tissue of the gall is increased excessively, new neuronal tissue of the brain would be kickstarted. But these new neurons being added would actually contain more of the plant genome as well, although it's a very specific amount of genes, which we will talk about in a second when we move into the presentations of symptoms in the body. So with the neurons increasing, it appears new portions critical to the functioning would be messed with, as well as postsynaptic receptors being targeted, specifically the serotonin receptors. This is integral to understanding everything about these creatures and the amnesia that comes on rapidly and goes away after drinking blood. As this new tissue builds up in the brain, this would have physical impacts on the brain, such as physical pressure, actual pushing pressure, but the receptors would also begin changing how the brain operates. So we need to kind of discuss serotonin receptors just for a second here. So as the brain is dealing with this new level of cells and these receptors, this could deplete the natural amount of serotonin in the brain quite rapidly and actually lead to a complete deficiency. When we look at the infected, they are quite stationary, and when exposed to a stimulus, they will move around, but at night they're kind of also looking for blood, and that's really the only time that they move. This would indicate that since they are up in the middle of the night, the circadian rhythm is likely completely thrown off. Their lethargy is also fairly noted as a prevalent issue, as it continues to show what is taking place on a neurotransmitter level. Their aggression is increased and their sense of self is completely gone. We'll talk about the physical growths here in a second. Serotonin depletion, and I'm talking about when you run out of it, is absolutely no joke. It's not just a mood issue, but also memory depending on the severity of the depletion. And this can be pretty alarming to people. Think of someone who has gone through a traumatic event that could lead to depression, for instance. Their brains are physically not holding on to memories, and they have extreme difficulties recalling information as well. Low serotonin levels can be linked to this issue. While it's quite nuanced in terms of how it's related, what we can assume is that the serotonin levels being as low as they are due to a buildup of receptors in the postsynaptic gap in areas like the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory retrieval. We can also assume then that the memory cannot be legitimately recalled, leading to this issue of amnesia. This amnesia appears to only have one way of being technically rectified, which is the blood of others. But then, why is this the case? Well, if the serotonin levels are low, as I am suggesting that they are as low as they are, then the only real physical issue with the brain would have to be the buildup of tissue, receptors being increased in number, and the physical depletion of the serotonin transmitter known to actually increase aggression, memory loss, and breakdown of standard human patterns, as well as a sense of self. So to understand why blood fixes it, you need to understand how the body actually makes serotonin. So this one, it's going to be a little science heavy, but the tryptophan, which is the stuff from turkeys, is the physical raw material that makes up serotonin. So here's how the process looks. The body synthesizes serotonin from the amino acid tryptophan in a two-step process. First, tryptophan is converted into 5-hydroxytryptophan, or 5-HTP, by the enzyme tryptophan hydroxylase. Then 5-HTP is converted into serotonin, also known as 5-hydroxytryptamine, or 5-HT, which is by the enzyme aromatic amino acid decarboxylase. This process is crucial for regulating mood, sleep, and other bodily functions, as well as memory. So you can either eat tryptophan, which actually helps to naturally increase serotonin levels, but it's only based on if your body thinks that you need serotonin. It should be known that your body produces two distinct pools of serotonin, the body's pool and then the brain's pool. Due to the blood-brain barrier, serotonin from the blood does not cross over into the neuronal space, and for good reason, as this would completely screw with your communication within your brain. Your gut actually produces a lot of serotonin under normal circumstances. So, and I'm not saying that this is how to fix anything, I'm just saying if you're feeling a little off sometimes, and not full-blown depression, obviously that has to be addressed and that could be genetic and all that, but if you're feeling a little off and a little down from time to time, check your diet. Just throwing that out there. But with higher demand and lower levels, clearly issues are presenting themselves for the body. But what I would suggest is that there appears to be a break in this barrier because there would have to be at a very specific location for any of my hypothesis on this work, which I think is in the spinal cord. Somehow, blood is allowed to a degree into the cerebral spinal fluid, or CSF. When this happens, serotonin that would naturally be in the body is allowed in, which can then flow up to the brain, which is actually, it's very, very critical to understand. This is what's causing, I think, the sudden reversal of amnesia in the body. So as this is likely happening to a change in the body structure brought on by the infection that is not physically observable quite yet, but given the growth, it's clearly piercing some area, and it could be happening internally at first. As a person bites another and ingests the blood, you may be wondering if there really is enough serotonin in the blood. And the answer is yes, tons of serotonin is locked away in the platelets of the blood in dense granules. And this is why the infected are going after the blood and not the meat of a person. As the serotonin is absorbed by their gut, this high level begins flooding the cerebral spinal fluid, where it then heads up to the ventricles of the brain. And from here, you know what's located literally touching the ventricles? The limbic system. And what's in the limbic system? The hippocampus, the memory retrieval area of the brain. So quite literally, these platelets are ingested, serotonin levels spike in the CSF, which in turn causes us to flood the brain, allowing for those neurons to briefly return to a normal functioning rate, which immediately allows for the person to return to a state of actually remembering everything. However, what they just did would be a relative unknown to them, as they would really not be codifying memories, which such low levels of neurotransmitters would prevent. What is already stored, such as memories of the past, are then kept because they are already there. New memories formed during this brief return to normalcy are not really kept, as in order to solidify memories, you need to sleep so your brain can actually move memories from the short-term area, which is in the prefrontal cortex, to several different areas such as the neocortex. And that's basically cementing long-term memories, and emotional memories would be stored near the amygdala and things like that. So once the serotonin levels begin to run low again, this can lead to the fainting, and then eventually the person switches back over to a more baser functioning. The brain, starved of serotonin once more, seeks it out by biting others and absorbing it through their platelets, creating an endless cycle of infecting, coming back to, and then losing that again, causing the person to seek out more blood. It appears, though, if blood is regularly applied, then the body can continue on a level that creates sort of a fountain of youth effect. The person will not age, as their body is genetically snapshotted at that point in time. And given serotonin actually affects the promotion of cellular mitosis, it appears this virus may have a way to correct any genetic mutations that arose. But along with that, given that some trees have much longer lifespans, it could be that their ability to correct mutations has been passed on to humans who are infected. However, in those chronically low in serotonin, their cells have issues dividing, in which case they will begin to physically change, versus those who actually have continual access to blood, whose bodies are allowed to repair. And it also appears that, there is an infection with plants taking place. In those that bite, though, they will come back to, but not remember how they got there. And in those that are less successful or isolated, it appears their bodies can begin to degrade, and instead of the virus containing some of the plant genome that inspired the new growth in the body, those will actually become more prevalent than the original human cells. As this happens, growths can begin to appear from the skull and shoulder areas, which is a literal plant infection. But you might be asking yourself, well, why would that present itself in Ethan, but not present itself in anybody else who was infected? So this is just me purely hypothesizing this. But on plants exists the outside layer of the body, which is known as the cambium. This is a layer of, say, a tree that is capable of growing individually from the rest of the plant. So when you want to splice together, in another tree limb on a tree, the other tree can actually grow with it, because because of the cambium layer incorporates the new cells into this new layer. Not really sure why I stuttered there. It is what it is. Moving on. I would say then that this layer is actually now found on humans who are infected. When they run into other plants or trees just by being out in the wilderness, these may actually become embedded into their skin, and this would in turn allow it to grow using more nutrients from the body as well. So given the viral infection also, and the changing of the cells, markers that designated self really may not be that important anymore, and as a result of that, new plant tissue added is not attacked by the immune system. So finally, how do you actually fix this? Well, horrifically, this appears to be literally the most treatable infection I have ever seen on this channel. While you are infected with a virus, it appears to be predicated on the neurotransmitters and receptors. Administering serotonin directly to the CSF in controlled, regular amounts would actually keep that person awake and functional without the need for blood-consuming issues. While this is happening, antiviral medications would be administered as well. This may give your body a chance to fight the infection itself. The problem is, it couldn't have been studied quick enough to turn this issue around. That's at least how I believe all of this works, and if I was in this fictional universe, I would have definitely been bitten, but hey, I would have tried. But anyhow, I want to thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys thought down in the comments and discuss the idea I had. Please leave a like if you enjoyed, and consider subscribing if you want more content like this. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, and Roanoke Tales link, where if that hits 1 million subs by summer of 2027, I am literally going to go up to Michigan and hunt the Michigan Dogman. He comes out in June of 2027. The next time he comes out is June of 2037. So be aware, I'll be old then. But speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. At the astronaut tier, we have Bananas Are Epic. Thank you, bro. Next up at the astrophysicist tier, we have Death's Dancer. Thank you as well, my man. And the scientist tier, we have Dakota 23, Frank Shaftcrank, I Actually Love Electric Cars and the Anglerfish, Invictus Echo, Medieval Weevil, Metric System, Official Texan, and Stutz. Thank you guys as well. And the rest of my patrons, I do appreciate y'all's support. You're absolute ballers, and it helps a lot to keep this channel running and keeping everything going along smoothly. So thank you guys. All right, that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I will see y'all in the next one.